Good morning. So, what I want to review today is what I do in the morning, how I make my watch list, how I make my plans. I'm going to analyze some charts and what I look for potential plays. Sadly, this is my second time recording this video because I recorded the whole thing and then realized the microphone was not on. So, I'm just going to redo it. But so I'm starting from the beginning. So what I do in the beginning is I'll look at yesterday's plans and see if they're relevant today. So what I was looking at yesterday, this was my only plan that I saw. ABIL, ABIL, potential bounce short if can spike to low 6 area. So first let me pull it up real quick. Hold on. So you can see by the daily chart that there was some volume traded here and some volume traded here, but we can see that this volume day was the biggest volume relative to what happened recently. But yeah, so let's look at this. It had 22 million volume. The high was 857. This one, it had 33 million volume and the high was 814. So you could see that this resistance is already giving this one some trouble. So during this spike day, it's not really a potential short because the volume was overwhelming. But I mean, some more experienced traders could take this, but I'd rather stay on the sidelines and wait for something more clear cut and easier to trade. But so what the better play is waiting for a bounce short for it to spike into this area. Not this day because it still needed to come down more, but when it came down, if it gave any potential spiking into this area, let's look at my plan, what I said. So I wanted it to spike to the low 6 area for starter. So if it got to this 620, 630 area, it's a good place to take a starter, small starter, because you can see the consolidation here in this area. It will give it some trouble if it tries spiking this low 6s. So you could take a small starter because your risk is going to be the 750 area. And let me make this bigger real quick so we can see it better. So taking the starter, if it spikes like this morning into this 6 area, it's a good idea because you have this consolidation area that's going to give it some trouble because volume was being traded throughout it. And if it got up to 750s, it's likely to reject because this is the last top it had before the huge panic. And the bag holders from this top were also selling into this area. That's why I had some trouble. But my plan yesterday, which it didn't do anything, and it was the plan for this day too, and this day, which is if it spikes to that low 6. So my plan would be to add near risk if it gets up to that 750 and then proves it as resistance, and then I'll move risk lower as resistance develops. So because there's really no volume anymore and it might have trouble trying to spike to that area, I'm going to put this so first I'm going to do is Wednesday and then put the date, and then I'm going to put let's do main because I want to be able to know what to focus on the open and what to kind of keep in the back of my mind. And I'm going to take this and put it on Backburner because it has low volume and it's going to have some trouble spiking. So I'm going to say ABIL on Backburner for potential bounce short if can respike into previous resistance area. So the reason why I put this is you don't really know how far it's going to spike. It could fail in the 5 area, and then you would just have to reevaluate the plan and adapt from there. So if it gets to the 6 area, if it gets to the 5 area, that could be a potential short because it's in the 2s. But that's where you'll start to reevaluate your plan. So it's on Backburner. If it starts to spike, that's when I'll try to change that plan and see what's going on based on the current price action. So what I do now is, since we did yesterday's plans, I wrote them down. I'm going to start trying to review the top percent gainers. And what you can do here is you can either scan for the top percent gainers in the morning, but like you're going to have limited ones because there's not that much volume traded. So I'm going to click this previous day check mark here and give it a second, and then it'll show previous day data on the scans and your gainers. And let me sort this by volume. There we go. So first thing we see, volume 43 million. That's a nice decent volume, especially for a 13 million float. And it was up 200% on the day. $3 stock. This looks interesting. Let's see. So what I see here right off the bat, on the 1 year chart, and then you can see here that there's not really any volume traded, just one day here, but it was very limited volume. So there's not really anywhere to short into. And then you go on to the longer term chart. This is the most time frame they have. There's still no volume. So let's zoom in into the current daily and see what happens. So if you were shorting into this resistance, bad idea. Not enough volume here. 3.8 million volume. You can't really short into that. It's very low odds, and as you can see what happens. So you could see that also intraday. So that's it for the daily. You can't really see anything else here except that there's 40 million traded volume here, and it topped in this 4.5 area. So then you're going to want to move into intraday. Let's do a 2-minute chart so it looks a little smoother. Alright. You could see in the first screen day, which was yesterday, consolidated in the pre-market and then got this huge morning spike. And when it got to that resistance on the daily where there wasn't much volume, where was it? So 274. You can see by the intraday that it was spiking into this area, and based on this action you already can tell that people are getting trapped on both sides, short and long. But you see that it's higher lows, it's low float, the volume's high. Not really a good short on first green day, and especially into that 275 resistance, because look what happened. It came up to the 250s. People were probably thinking, that's it, this is it, 275 is the resistance, and here's the short. And then it pops up real quick. When it gets to that 275 area, it's right here. Panic starts to set in for the short sellers. And then you got this overreaction kind of squeeze because they're all piling in based on a small volume risk. And, think of it. If there's 3 million volume and there's 6 million shares shorted and they're all scared, at least 4 million of them are going to cover. But, not this, that didn't really happen here, but I'm just saying, if you think about it, there's more shorts ready to buy than the volume on the previous resistances. So those shorts trying to buy are going to overwhelm the previous bag holders, and that's what makes it run quicker like this. So ASNS, what I'd be looking for here, this first day, not really a short, but because it ran so nicely and it's gapping down today, it could be a potential short into a morning spike to the 4 area or 415, with your ultimate risk on this 450 until you get a hard rejection, and that's where you start moving your risk down and make the odds in your favor. So this is an overextended gap down play based on what it's currently doing, but you can't judge based on pre-market. You need to wait till the open, you need to see the volume. But so this is definitely going to be a main watch because it's a higher odds setup than most plays, and there's a timestamp, and it's setting up correctly, so you can watch it, and if it doesn't set up correctly, you just avoid it. So let's do ASNS on watch for potential overextended gap down. You always want to put put what kind of setup you're actually looking for on that stock in your plan, because if you're looking for a bounce short and this thing starts bottoming and curling up, you shouldn't be buying it, because you're looking for a bounce short for a reason. Focus on the setup you're comfortable with. Focus on the setups that give you the high odds. Sorry about that. Focus on the setups that give you the high odds win rate, and that's how you increase your chance of success. So overextended gap down, and I'd be looking to short into morning spike to, you could start in the 4 area to the 415 area, small size, because you want that near red green. Your risk is going to be this high, because you don't want to get shaken out if it pops through here to 425 and then fails. So initial risk, I always, I scale in smaller and I pick the little bit of wider risk, and I'll explain that in a second. Let me just finish this plan to 4 or 415 area with ultimate risk on 4.5. When you have a risk like this, 4.5, the whole dollar, half dollar, we consider it a magnet or a momentum sort of spot, this 450 right here, because it's a half dollar and volume comes in during those times, it'll get some volatility. And when you have a risk like that, are you going to be able to sit through a 5-cent pop if it's quick and then fails, a 10-cent pop, or are you going to be freaking out into that 350? You're getting out 352, freaking out. 452, and then it gets to like 459 and then fails. You don't want to do that. So what you do is you wait for that morning spike. If you get it to, like, let's say we get in 405, you're going to want to take a 1/6 position so that you're comfortable with it doing the over-under kind of at the 450 area. So you don't want to end up getting out at 460. If it, like, while it's spiking, obviously you want to cut losses, but you don't want to end up getting out at 460 with your full position, because that's going to give you 10 cents more of, like, a huge, you know what I mean? If you're in the full size, you get 10 cents more of a loss. It's gonna add up. So what you do is just take the small size, be patient, and if it fails in this area and gives you a hard rejection, you can short into bounce to the 430s or something, and you can add there with your new risk as the high. And that's how you, like, make sure you're not getting out into a push for no reason, and make sure you're cutting losses at the right time. But again, if you're still in doubt, it's okay to cut losses exactly at 450 or 451. And if you end up doing that 3 or 4 times, and then you realize that those 3 or 4 setups keep failing after you get out, then that setup, like, you should know you could be a little more patient. But me personally, I ended up getting shaken out at a whole dollar, half dollar, and I did it a few times and then realized that the stock would always end up in my favor anyway. So what you do there is, if you're uncomfortable holding through a little bit of a over under, then just scale down, and it'll be much easier, and it's less stress on your brain. So yeah, that's my analysis for ASNS. Let's look at the gainers again. These are yesterday's gainer, just making sure. DVN, I see that there's 500 million float, 6 million volume, $40 stock, not interested. INFY, 17 billion float, 5.46 volume, $20 stock, not interested. For these, I might click on them to see how the chart is, just to double check the float. If the chart is nice, then I might want to double check the float. So let's look at DVN real quick, see if that's one of those cases, which I doubt it. But yeah, see, I don't like this chart, absolutely not. And the float is huge. But look, if the chart was very nice looking and it was a parabolic, like supernova on the daily, it was a good potential bounce short, then I'll go through the filings and start seeing if the float is is smaller than it says here. If it's like 30 million float and this is an error, then it's a potential play if the chart is nice. But if it's 30 million float and you have this ugly daily, absolutely not. If it's 30 million float, this is still a terrible play. INFY, let's move this out of the way a little so we can see the daily, because that's what's important. No, you see this consistent volume. You see, it's just not, it's not volatile. It's a very low odds setup. Float is huge. LPI, it still has 230 million float. But again, I'm checking if the chart is nice, just in case. And no, you have this consistent volume again. It's very hard to trade these. And yeah, it is a big float because of how the chart looks. PXS, this float is 1.4 million. The volume is 1.4 million yesterday. The float is 20 million. But if you see this chart, okay, it traded some volume here, gave it resistance. And then here it also, during these days, traded some volume and gave it resistance levels. But with this kind of thing, it's just so choppy. And the real plan would be like, okay, if it gets to 280s, 270s, or it starts to struggle here at 250, that's a potential starter short. And your risk could be either this high or this high, depending on like how big the volume is, how's the volatility, whatever. But I don't think it's going to get to this area at all. And if it does, it's probably going to grind up or like be a small spikes and then another small spike. So this is something I'm going to avoid myself, but it doesn't mean don't trade it, but it could be, it's just, for me, it's a gamble, I think. Now let's look at the gainers again. AIRI, but now we're getting into the lower volume one. It traded under 1 million volume yesterday. And that's because you could see that into the close got the big spike. There's not really much volume, heavy volume traded. You have a 1 million volume here, but that's not enough for a short, So for this one, it could be a backburner for like later this week or next week if it runs for a few days. I want to see multiple running days so that it gets some extension, and then I want also building volume. It needs way more volume if it wants to become a potential short. But some fluff news, I don't know if it's good news or not. It's something about the F-15 Eagle fighter aircraft, but like, the news, you want the reaction. This reaction is very good. It could run later, but I'm gonna let it develop, and if it runs, I'm gonna look to short it, just because I'm not really good at buying lately. So I've been avoiding it for about 2-3 months now. Actually, haven't bought a stock. So here's AIRI, and on Backburner, if it can have a multi-day run, look to trade overextended. Gap down only if resistance volume is high enough, or look to bounce short well, that would be much later in the pattern, so it would run for multiple days, fail, and then the bounce would be in for potential short. I'd say later next week then. And this all depends on if it continues running, if it keeps volume up, if it gets more volume. So that's going to be towards the complete bottom of my backburner list. So I'm not even really going to look at it, but if, like, let's say I see the name on the gainers and it's like traded like 10 million volume that day, then I'm going to like be interested. I'm going to click on it and see what's going on there. But just in case, let's see if the bigger chart gives us anything. No, still nothing really over a few 1.4 million volume. It's not enough to short into. So let's check out the gainers again, just in case there's anything left, because we're in the really low volume now. Yeah, no, I'm gonna just uncheck this previous day now, and let's see if anything's running today in pre-market. Give that a few seconds. All right. So sorted by volume, we see ACAD, $18 stock. I'm not really interested in trading an $18 stock, but we'll check it out. See if there's anything here. No, don't like this volume on the daily. I don't like how the overall daily looks. I'm in the 5-year, so maybe that's why, but no, still not something I would trade, not something I'd look at, but nice, decent spike in pre-market. Let's check out MBRX. That one's running right now, it looks like, in the morning. So, okay, on the 1-year chart, you have this decent volume here. What is this? 33 million volume. Yeah, let's keep looking at the daily real quick. Let's make this bigger. So now let's look at a bigger time frame to see if there's anything else in this resistance level. Where did it trade? It looks like 334 was the high. Yeah, 334 was the high, and it had 33 million volume. So it doesn't match up with any of these volume days, and it does. I mean, this day, okay, it failed in this area. It had decent volume, almost 10 million, and that was in the mid threes as well. And then you can go back here. As you can see, these few days also had trouble in this area. So what we're gonna do, see, this had volume, but it was way too low. It doesn't matter. The spike, it didn't spike enough to be a resistance level. You can see by these days, volume was building. It gave a nice daily supernova. The high here was 375, and the volume traded here was 20 million shares. So okay, 375 is a resistance with 20 million shares in that during that day. And then you can go to this day, and you see that the high is 338. It's kind of a coincidence, isn't it, that the other day topped at 334, the most recent day. And then this day here topped at 340. So all these areas here are now, they're important levels. And yeah, so the mid threes is a key level, and the 3 area, I guess, because it had some trouble here, and you know, this day. Yeah, so then you go try to match these up and see, okay, so at 330s to 3, like, so 3 to 330, there's decent amount of resistance here. So what a good idea would be is today, if it can spike to the high 2s, so like 290 area or to 3, that would be a nice potential short, and then you risk 334 or 335 just to give it like a few cents, like see how it acts there. But yeah, 335 is your risk. You should get out if that breaks, because then something's potentially going wrong, and if it fails again, you can always re-enter. So don't go beyond your risk just because you think, okay, what if I don't have shares? But if you lose your whole account, then shares aren't going to matter anymore, and you're out of the game, and you have no potential for success after losing all your money. You know what I mean? You can refund your account, but you know, your emotions are not intact anymore, and you really need to reevaluate your trading. It's a slippery slope after that. So what I'd be looking for here, let's see, MBRX. I'm gonna watch it for a potential spike into that high 2 area, so like 290, 280, because that's it's getting near that resistance, and it gives you a limited risk. On watch for potential spike into high 2 area for starter short. So it's a starter again, because you have that 30 cents of risk, 34 cents of risk, and you want to be able to sit. You have 40 cents of risk almost if you're getting in at 290, but you want to be able to make that risk small, and you want to be able to sit through a little bit of spiking without like getting out at 320, you know, because if you have big size, you're gonna get scared out. So starter short, risking 334 as initial risk. Plan to move risk lower after resistance proves. So that's it for today. You can see ASNS is my main. ASNS is my main. MBRX is my second main, but I don't know if it's gonna spike enough. Maybe tomorrow. Backburner, ABIL, it's for later this week if it can spike into that resistance area. Sorry again. And you got AIRI, that's on Backburner. If it can have a multi-day run, look to trade the overextended gap down, but it needs to run more. So what I'm gonna do now, since I'm done with my plans, I'm gonna post this video, and I'm gonna post these plans in the comments down there. I mean in the description. But these are like plans are telling you guys what I'm looking for, but it's not a guide for you to like. Just because I'm looking to short ASNS, it doesn't mean it's gonna fail at 4.5, because it could go to 20 by tomorrow. So. And it also doesn't mean it's going to spike at all today. Like, it could just go straight down to the 2s or 1s. So these are just for you to get an idea of what I look for. And you could look for the same things in your trading. But I suggest test every setup. And you want to see how they work out in the end. So if you want to look at these plans later and check out the daily charts, see how they play out in the end, feel free to do that. It will definitely help your learning. And I do that as well. So thanks for watching, guys, and trade safe.